What if the advice that was supposed to help men have better relationships was the exact advice that made those relationships fail? What if the instructions handed to an entire generation? Love her unconditionally, be her equal, let her lead too, make her happiness your priority. What if following that advice perfectly was the thing that guaranteed the relationship would fall apart? That is not a rhetorical question. That is what I have watched happen over and over again to good men who did exactly what they were told. And today, I want to go through it. The specific advice, where it came from, why it sounded reasonable, and what it actually produced in the real marriages of real men who trusted it. Because I think men deserve to hear a woman say this plainly. You are not failures. Why you were not emotionally incompetent or too difficult or unable to love properly. You were following a map that had been drawn wrong, and the men who followed it most faithfully, the ones who genuinely tried, who adjusted themselves, who softened their edges and deferred and accommodated and made her happiness the organizing principle of their lives, those men paid the highest price of all. Not because they were weak, because they were sincere. So, let's start with the biggest one. The advice that sat underneath all the other advice like a foundation. And it went like this. Men and women are essentially the same. That the differences between them are mostly physical, mostly cultural, mostly the product of an unequal society that had discouraged women from showing their full range of capability. And that once that inequality was removed, once the playing field was level, men and women would think similarly, feel similarly, want similar things, and navigate relationships from a similar place. Treat her like a man with different anatomy, and you will understand her. That was the advice. That premise collapsed everything that came after it, because if men and women are essentially the same on the inside, then a man can rely on his own instincts to understand a woman. He can assume that what makes sense to him will make sense to her. He can expect that she processes conflict the way he processes it, that she experiences disappointment the way he does, that when she says she is fine, she means approximately the same thing that he means when he says he is fine. None of that is true. And a man who believes it is true will spend years in a marriage feeling like he is somehow failing to connect with a person who is, in theory, just like him. And he will blame himself. Because the advice told him they were the same, so any failure of understanding must be his failure. He must not be listening hard enough. He must not be emotionally available enough. He must be missing something obvious. And so he works harder. He tries to be more like what the advice told him a good partner looked like. More emotionally open, more willing to defer, more careful about asserting his own needs, in case asserting them meant he was not taking her needs seriously enough. More willing to ask her what she wanted rather than deciding what he thought was right. And the harder he worked at being that version of himself, the worse things got. Because here is what the advice never told him. Women are not wired to feel safe with a man who is perpetually asking what she wants. They are wired to feel safe with a man who knows what he wants and is moving toward it with quiet confidence. That is not an opinion. It runs in the biology. A woman's nervous system has been reading masculine energy for a very long time. And the signal it is looking for is not whatever you think, honey. The signal it is looking for is steadiness, direction. A man who is not rattled, who is not waiting for her to set the course, who has a sense of where things are going and the presence to hold that direction even when she tests it. Because she will test it, not consciously, but she will. And a man who flinches every time that test comes, who softens and defers and asks what he did wrong, is a man who registers as unsafe to a part of her that has nothing to do with her ideology. And this leads directly into the second piece of bad advice. And the advice was this: share leadership equally. Step back. Let her have the wheel sometimes. Defer to her judgment. Remove yourself from the position of the one who sets the direction, because that is what an evolved, equal partnership looks like. And men, genuinely trying to do right by the women they loved, did exactly that. And what they got was chaos. Not because women are incapable of leading. Some women lead brilliantly in professional contexts, in their own lives, in situations where they have chosen the responsibility and built the competence for it. But in a relationship, in the intimate, daily, emotionally loaded context of a shared life, a woman who has been placed in the leadership role by a man who has stepped back from it does not feel respected. She feels abandoned on an island with a decision she did not ask to make alone, and an anxiety she cannot fully explain. I watched my father do this early in his marriage. He was a good man who believed deeply in my mother's intelligence and capability, and wanted to honor it by deferring to her on things he thought she would handle well. And I remember watching my mother in those situations, watching her face when a decision landed entirely in her lap. And even as a child, I could see that it was not what she wanted. She wanted him to have a view. She wanted him to walk in with a direction and invite her to refine it, not hand her a blank page and wait. Because here is what women actually want from the man in their lives. They want him to care enough about the outcome to have an opinion. They want to feel that he is engaged, that he is thinking, that he is present in the shaping of their shared life rather than standing back and approving whatever she decides. Deferring is not love. Deferring is absence wearing the costume of respect. And women feel the difference even when they cannot name it. So, the man who outsourced leadership in good faith, who genuinely believed he was honoring her, produced in her the specific anxiety that comes from feeling unsupported, from feeling like she is the only adult in the room, from feeling, slowly, that the man she married is not someone she can lean on, but someone she has to manage. You see, and a woman who feels like she is managing her husband has lost the attraction she had for him. Because you cannot be attracted to someone you are managing. That is not how it works. And this is a good moment to tell you about the Senior Men Club weekly newsletter. Every week I bring honest, straight-talking guidance for men who want to understand this territory clearly. How relationships actually work, what women actually need from men, and how to build the second half of your life on ground that is genuinely solid. Link is below. Okay. Now, the third piece of advice that did enormous damage. And this one is the most seductive, the hardest to argue against, because it sounds like the most loving thing a person can say. The advice was, make her happiness your priority. Put her first. If she is happy, you are doing it right. If she is unhappy, figure out what you did and fix it. Her emotional state is your report card. That advice produced a generation of men who organized their entire emotional lives around a woman's emotional state, who tracked her moods from the moment they woke up, who adjusted their own behavior, their plans, their tone, their wants, their sense of what a good day looked like, all of it calibrated against whether she was happy. And when she was not happy, they felt responsible. And they worked to fix it. And then she was happy for a while, and then she was not happy again. And they worked to fix it again. It never ended. because it was never a solvable problem. A woman's emotional state is not a problem a man is supposed to solve. It is hers. She owns it. And when a man takes ownership of it, when he makes her happiness his project, he has done two damaging things simultaneously. He has placed an unreasonable demand on himself that he can never successfully meet, and he has robbed her of the one thing that actually produces lasting contentment in a person, which is the experience of being responsible for her own emotional life. A woman who has a man who will always adjust himself to manage her moods learns over time that her moods have power. That unhappiness is effective. That the way to move the man in her life is to be visibly not okay. And she does not choose this consciously. It is not calculated in most cases, but the pattern reinforces itself until it is deep. And the man is exhausted, and the relationship has become a performance. He is always at risk of failing. And running underneath all of this, feeding every piece of bad advice, contaminating every good intention, was the fourth and most foundational lie. The one that came wrapped in the most beautiful language. And the advice was, find your soulmate, fall in love, and everything else will follow. Romantic love is the answer. Chase the feeling. When you find the right person, you will know because it will feel extraordinary, and it will stay extraordinary. Hold out for that. Settle for nothing less. The advice on romantic love told men that finding the right woman would complete them. That there was a specific person out there whose presence would resolve the low hum of incompleteness that most men carry. That love, real love, the kind the movies showed and the songs described, was the answer to the question he did not quite have words for. And that once he found that love and committed to it, things would fall into place. What actually happened is that romantic love set expectations on another person that were irrational from the beginning. She was supposed to be his partner, his best friend, his confidant, his intellectual equal, his emotional mirror, his sexual partner, his co-parent, his financial teammate, and the person who made him feel, on his worst days, that everything was going to be okay. That is not a partner. That is a religion. And when the religion failed to deliver, as it always does, because no human being can carry that weight for another human being, the man blamed himself, or blamed her, or blamed the relationship, when the real problem was the framework he had been handed. Because romantic love is not what they told him it was. Romantic love, in its early form, is a biological event. It is a neurological state that lights up the same regions of the brain that cocaine lights up. It is designed to produce attachment, to override rational evaluation, to make a person seem more extraordinary than they are, so that the relationship forms before the full reality is visible. And it wears off. Always, for every person. That is not a failure. That is the design. And what is supposed to come after it, why, or what the advice never adequately prepared men for, is something quieter and harder and far more valuable. A conscious, daily choice to care for another person, not because of how they make you feel, but because of who they are and who you are when you are genuinely committed to their well-being. That is real love. It does not feel like the movies. It feels like showing up on a Tuesday when you do not feel like showing up. It feels like patience with someone's limitations because you have chosen to see them fully and stay anyway. It does not produce the euphoria of early romantic love. What it produces over time is something that holds. But the advice told men to chase the euphoria, to treat the absence of it as a sign that something was wrong. And so when the inevitable moment came, when she was no longer extraordinary, when she was just a person with flaws and moods and recurring patterns that he had seen 100 times, that moment felt like loss. I felt like evidence of failure, felt like something that needed to be solved or replaced. And the man who had organized his entire emotional life around that euphoria, who had been told that its presence meant he was in the right relationship and its absence meant something was wrong. That man had no framework for what to do with ordinary love. He did not know how to value it. He did not know how to build inside it. He had been told the wrong story about what love was supposed to feel like, and so when it changed into something more honest and more real, he did not recognize it. So what should the advice have been? And I want to answer that because I think men deserve a clear answer. The advice should have told men that women are profoundly different from them, Ida. Not inferior, not superior. Different. And that understanding those differences is the most important work a man can do before he commits to a life with one. That women live in an emotional world where safety is the primary currency, and a man who cannot provide that safety steadily, consistently, from a place of genuine inner security rather than anxious performance, will always be fighting a losing battle in a relationship. The advice should have told men that leadership in a relationship is not oppression. It is care. It is the thing that allows a woman to relax into her own nature rather than having to carry weight she was not designed to carry. That leading does not mean dictating. It means having a vision, communicating it clearly, and making the person beside you feel that things are being guided by someone who knows where they are going. And the advice should have told men that her happiness is hers, that he can contribute to it, can create conditions that support it, can be a man worth being happy around, but he cannot be responsible for it. And a man who tries to be responsible for it will break himself against a problem that has no solution. And the advice should have told men that what comes after romantic love is not loss. It is arrival. The place where you can actually see the person you are with clearly without the fog of the early period and make a real choice about whether you want to stay. Most men were never told that this moment was coming. So when it arrived, they did not know what it was. And they responded to it in all the wrong ways. Now, I want to say something to the men who followed all of this advice faithfully and ended up standing in the rubble of a marriage they built in good faith. You were not wrong to love. You were not wrong to try. You were not wrong to care about getting it right. The instinct that made you take the advice seriously, the instinct that said, I want to do right by the person I am with. That instinct is good. It was never the problem. The problem was the advice. And the advice was wrong. What you know now about how women actually work, about what leadership in a relationship actually looks like, about where romantic love begins, and what real love requires, that knowledge is yours. It was purchased with years, and it is real, and it is worth building on. The man who carries that knowledge forward, who stops apologizing for his masculine nature and starts leading from it, who understands that a woman does not want to be his equal in every dimension, but his partner in the specific way that actually works. That man has something that younger men simply do not have yet. He has been through the thing. He has lived inside the wrong framework long enough to know it from the inside. And he has come out the other side with a clarity that no amount of advice could have given him in advance. That clarity is the foundation. build on it. And if you want practical, honest, week by week support for doing exactly that in your health, your peace, your relationships, your sense of what this chapter of your life can actually be, the Senior Men Club weekly newsletter is where that work happens. Link is below. Stay strong. I'll see you in the next one.